Hello, my name's Dave Spencer. I'm one of the trustee directors of OTA, Online Transport Archive, and welcome along to our YouTube channel. And it's being relaunched this spring 2026. I hope what you're going to see is to your liking. We're using images from the vast array of photographers, including productions which were first made in the 1980s. In the following couple of decades, they were made by our now president, Martin Jenkins, and Wilf Watters, and they assembled a vast array of ancient footage, and these went on to form the foundation of what would become OTA. We became a registered charity in 2004 and are now an established British archive with content worldwide. So sit back and enjoy, relax, and thank you for joining us, and I hope that your trip into the past with us will make you want to visit once again. So bye for now.
Years ago, a group of enthusiasts reopened the Kent and East Sussex railway line. Today it is one of the tourist most top attractions, carrying over 80,000 passengers a year.
Restoring and maintaining locomotives and carriages like these, which date from the Victorian times, is a major task, and it's a real tribute to all the enthusiasts that have helped ensure the line's survival that we now earn sufficient revenue to properly look after such historic vehicles.
The Kent and East Sussex Railway was the epitome of England's classic rural railways, characterised by sharp curves, steep gradients and small trains calling at remote stations, miles from the nearest village. It was built under the direction of Colonel Holman F. Stevens, opening on the 2nd of April 1900. Meagre profits were achieved initially, but road competition took its toll and meant that from 1926 onwards the line incurred ever-increasing losses.
In order to economise, Colonel Stevens put road buses on rails, but although cheap they were uncomfortable and were nicknamed the bumper by passengers. Another way of saving money was to run mixed trains. These included passenger coaches and goods wagons, and they became a feature of the line.
The railway struggled on until 1939, when the outbreak of war made it an important secondary route to the coast, and so survived to be nationalised in 1948. Despite improvements, including the relaying of the track, receipts continued to fall. All the passengers could be carried in one coach, with plenty of room to spare. In short, closure was inevitable. Passenger services ceased in 1954, and goods traffic struggled on until 1961, when the line closed completely, seemingly forever.
A group of pioneering enthusiasts was determined to save the line and succeeded in reopening the first section in 1974. This film shows how in the 25 years since then, the line has been transformed into a successful tourist attraction whilst retaining the magical charm and delightful atmosphere for which the Kent and East Sussex Railway is renowned.
The official reopening ceremony took place on June the 1st, 1974, and was performed by local MP Bill Deeds. Today, Lord Deeds is still a keen supporter and the line's president.
Well, the other day this morning, as the safety of we will already be on. As they test the fortune, one who may travel on her.
The first train was hauled by terriers number 10 Sutton and number 3 Bodiam. The line had always been associated with this type of locomotive. Number 3 was purchased second-hand for the line in 1901 and has spent most of its working life on the railway. These engines, dating from the 1870s, first worked services on the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway's East London branch and were nicknamed terriers because of their distinctive bark when working hard. As trains became heavier in the early 1900s, the engines were transferred to branch lines or shunting duties, and some were sold to smaller railways. The line originally had a second terrier of its own, number 5 Rolvenden, but sadly this was scrapped in 1938. Throughout the 30s and 40s, the line hired a number of the class from the Southern Railway, and when British Railways took over operations in 1948, they continued to utilise the engines. Number 3 ended its British Railways days on the Hayling Island branch, along with several other terriers, including number 10 Sutton. When that branch closed in 1963, both were saved for use on the Kent and East Sussex Railway, arriving in 1964. Sutton saw regular service until the early 1990s, but sadly is currently out of service, awaiting a major overhaul, which will include a new set of cylinders. The upkeep of such historic locomotives is now a very costly business, but we at the Kent and East Sussex Railway are determined to see these historic relics of the 19th century hard at work long into the 21st.
"1976 saw celebrations to mark the centenary of number 10 Sutton. In all, 9 engines were in action, including several that had since moved to other preserved lines. Southern Railway U-Class number 1618 was larger than any locomotive that had previously run on the line and was too heavy for much of the lightly engineered track. It was restricted to short runs around Tenterden Town Station. It moved to the Bluebell Railway in the 1970s, where it has regularly worked trains.
Initially, trains ran for just 1.5 miles to Rolvenden and back. Beyond there, much work remained to return the line into a serviceable condition. There was undergrowth to clear, track to renew, and drains and bridges to replace.
The station at Widdisham Road had been levelled when BR closed the line, but before passenger trains could reach this point, the original bridge over the New Mill Channel was in need of replacement.
There were lengthy discussions with the Kent River Authority, as changes to the valley's flood protection system had raised the water level, meaning the old bridge would have to be completely demolished. In November 1976, the Army were called in to blow it up, and volunteers helped prepare the site. Weeks of heavy rain had swelled the channel to almost flood conditions, but this did not prevent the new bridge being successfully lowered into place.
But it did stop the crane from making a graceful exit, the mammoth machine coming to grief and being stuck for over a month.
Following work over the winter, including track laying and ballasting, the new New Mill Bridge was ready for its first passenger trains by March 1978. Number 10 Sutton was again involved, this time sharing the honours with the line's only tender engine, the Norwegian.
Trains then ran to the site of the former Wittersham Road station, but much work was needed to turn this quagmire into a country halt. The station building was rescued from North Wales, the platform was rebuilt, the track relaid, and signals installed. The work was completed in little over a year, and former Prime Minister Sir Edward Heath officially opened the station in 1978.
Special events have always been a useful source of extra money and an excellent way to generate publicity. For several years in the 70s and early 80s, steam and country fairs were staged adjacent to Tenterden Town Station. For these, the line's steam trains were joined by a host of historic vehicles and fairground attractions.
Another important generator from the very earliest days of preservation has been the Santa Special steam trains, and when it snows, the trains run through a real Christmas card scene. Father Christmas and his band of pixies travel on each of these special trains, distributing presents to children, while the adults receive sherry and mince pies. These trains still run every December and now attract over 10,000 passengers every year. The product offered has improved year by year, making these scenes from the mid-70s look very primitive.
Hello, this is Bodiam. Now then, boys, how old are you? Anybody?
In 1976, the Norwegian was in charge of the Yuletide trains. This loco was built in 1919 to a Scottish design and spent most of its life working in Norway. Amongst the more notable of its tasks were snowplough duties on a line within the Arctic Circle that ran through a station called Hell. Now in its 80th year, the engine is enjoying a more gentle retirement here at the Kentney Sussex Railway.
income generation is vital as railways require continual expensive maintenance. In this scene from 1978, ballast is loaded into hoppers for transportation to the site of some recently renewed track. Once dropped, the ballast is shovelled into position by hand. Very hard work indeed, and a method that has now been mechanised with the use of more modern, on-track tamping machines. Here, another engineer's train is seen setting off from Tenterden. This one is unusually steam-hauled. Works trains are normally operated with one of the line's diesel locomotives.
Of course, not all the goods trains on the line are run for the engineers. Here, number 10 Sutton is seen at the head of a demonstration goods train, rekindling memories of the days when such traffic was more important to the line than passengers.
In 25 years, the line has been home to a number of locomotives that have since moved on. Number 26 was in use for several years before moving to Woolwich. Number 12 Marcia is still on the line, but is currently out of action and undergoing heavy restoration that should see this diminutive loco back in action in the early part of the next millennium. Dating from 1923, Marcia was built by Peckett and Sons of Bristol and worked in the private sidings of Hardman and Holden at their factory in Salford near Manchester until 1962, when it was saved for use on the K&ESR. The pump trolley is another remarkable survivor that should also see service into the 21st century.
In the years immediately following reopening, locomotives and carriages continued to arrive regularly, many items being purchased as insurance against the day when old-fashioned vehicles would cease to be readily available. In the railway's care, many of these vehicles have been transformed from scrap condition to as good as new, and notable guests have often officiated at ceremonies to mark the entry into traffic of restored locomotives. Here, William H. Austin, the line's former manager, unveils the nameplates of locomotive number 24. Joanna Lumley unveiled the new platform shelter at Rolvenden station and is just one of the celebrities to have visited the line.
The late 70s and early 80s saw trains running between Tenterden and Wittersham Road. Much of this period was a time of consolidation. Several of the engines and carriages that had arrived in serviceable condition now needed heavy maintenance or overhauls. New locomotive and carriage repair sheds were built at Rolvenden and Tenterden respectively, and today these facilities are used to carry out almost all of the work needed to restore and maintain the line's collection of historic vehicles. The track from Wittersham to Bodiam was still in place, but increasingly falling into disrepair, despite the best effort of the line's dedicated volunteers.
highlight of the 1981 season was the visit of the National Railway Museum's replica of Stephenson's famous rocket. The engine is due to return in July 1999 as part of the Silver Jubilee celebrations.
In 1982, the railway was at the forefront of the provision of accommodation for wheelchair users with a specially adapted coach, Petros, inaugurated by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother.
It gives me great pleasure to unveil this plaque to mark the inauguration of a special coach designed to accommodate disabled.
Stand back, gentlemen, please.
The 10th anniversary of reopening was celebrated in 1984. Trains ranging from the very small and the fairly small to the real thing.
The loco department was determined to put on a great show, and 6 engines were in steam for the occasion.
All the resident engines were kept busy working passenger and goods trains. Visiting Great Western Tank Engine number 1466 was also in action, and Lord Deeds returned to reenact the opening ceremony. He paid tribute to the line's volunteers and was impressed with the progress made in the decade since he had reopened the line.
In every way that one can think of, ladies and gentlemen, this is an asset to the wheels.
Number 10 Sutton was again hard at work. By this time, passenger service had been extended to Hexton Bridge, 1 mile beyond Rittisham Road, and with special permission from the Department of Transport, trains were propelled over this section. A year later, in 1985, the Steam to Victory event celebrated the vital role railways had played in World War II, with the line's ex-Army austerity engines and former USA Army locos in the spotlight.
By the late 80s, attention had turned to Northiam Station, and the company was determined to ensure that the Kent and East Sussex Railway once again linked the two counties of its title. The civil engineering, track laying and station restoration work took almost 3 years to complete, but is best remembered for 3 days of colourful activity as Northiam Station became the scene of one of Anneka Rice's famous challenges. The filming took place in July 1989, but it was almost a year later before work was really finished and the station could be reopened to passengers. Appropriately enough, the first public train was hauled by number 25, Northiam, assisted by number 10, Sutton.
Then look at that.
Well, Northiam, is it? There's Northiam, is it?
Yeah.
I got there.
Number 25 is one of 3 ex-Army locomotives on the line, numbers 23, 24 and 25. They were built in 1952 and 53 by the Hunslet Engine Company of Leeds. The design dates from World War II, when a robust, easy-to-maintain locomotive was required by the Army, and the type became known as the Hunslet Austerity class. They proved so successful that manufacture continued until 1964, by which time 464 had been constructed. After the war, the Army continued to use this type of engine, and these worked at Longmoor, Bicester and Shoebury Ness before coming to the Kent and East Sussex Railway in the 1970s.
The recession of the early 90s hit the railway very badly. Income fell and the line struggled to repay the money borrowed to extend to Northiam. In 1992, number 6619 was hired for the summer as the line didn't have enough working engines of its own to operate the service.
More permanent assistance arrived in the same year in the shape of Great Western Railway pannier tank number 1638, which was purchased by a dedicated supporter for use on the line. Designed by the Great Western Railway and built at the famous Swindon Works in 1951, this engine originally worked on the sharp curves and steep gradients of the South Wales valleys, and is ideally suited to similar conditions on the Kent and East Sussex. It spent a while in the 60s working on the Chinner branch in Oxfordshire, and came to the KNESR after initially being preserved on the Dart Valley Railway.
By 1995, changes to railways management had started to improve matters, and the 21st anniversary of reopening was a cause for celebration. Number 46443, only the second tender locomotive to work on the line in preservation, visited the line for part of the season and joined the railway resident tender engine, number 376 Norwegian. Here, the two engines are being prepared for the 21st anniversary gala, along with P-Class 1556 and Pannier 1638.
P-Class 1556 is a small tank engine built by the South Eastern and Chatham Railway at Ashford in 1909. Initially it worked on the Sevenoaks to Oxford branch, but was requisitioned during World War I and sent to shunts at the docks in Boulogne. After the war, the P-Class was used for shunting duties at various locations across the South East, and was hired by the Kent and East Sussex on several occasions in the 30s and 40s. Here it is seen in the southern black livery it carried then.
The parade of engines at Tenterden has become a favourite feature of summer galas. No fewer than 7 engines were on show for the 21st anniversary event, and a similar number has featured every summer since. The line's fortunes have gone from strength to strength in recent years, and now, 25 years after reopening, the line is financially more secure than at any time in its history.
The line has long been a popular destination for school visits. The painstaking restoration of a number of Victorian carriages has meant that in recent years many educational visits have been made by children studying this era.
Well, I would just hang on to that. Just hold on to it.
What about the little grate men standing next to him? What? Give me a word for that, can you? No, they didn't. What did go in there?
The magnificent Victorian train is almost unique in preservation and has been very popular with passengers and with film companies.
Crews don't always want an authentic scene. In 1996, this Keystone Cop-style story was filmed to promote Ford Escorts.
A year later, and the Victorian train was back in demand to recreate a scene from 1903 for BBC Television's The Phoenix and the Carpet.
Be right there, Rick.
The filming took place on a hot sunny day in May, but the action was set during the frosty Christmas holidays. No problem when you've got a specialist effects team to arrange instant snow and ice that won't melt.
It's not just film companies that want to reproduce the past. Railway photographers are also keen for authentic recreations of yesteryear. Here, P-Class number 1556 is seen with the splendid K and ESR mixed train, run exclusively for photographers.
These specials take much of the frustration out of railway photography, because if things aren't quite right the first time, you can always back the train up and try again.
Visiting engines continue to be a feature of the line's activities, providing variety for volunteers and visitors alike. In 1996, one of the country's oldest working steam engines, the Bellerophon, spent some time on the line. The engine, dating from 1874, certainly looked the part at the head of the magnificent Victorian train. Class Loco 47279 also worked on the line during 1996 and is seen here with a train of 1950s carriages.
quarter of a century after the line reopened, the importance of special events is undiminished.
Join the train now. Trains on my railway always run on time. The train will be leaving.
Friends of Thomas the Tank Engine Fun Days are amongst the most popular activities the line stages. The Fat Controller endeavours to see that all the trains run on time and tries to ensure devious diesel and the troublesome trucks don't play too many tricks.
So Charlie, if you bring the troublesome trucks down into the platform, I'm sure devious diesel will learn a thing or two. Thank you. Devious, behave yourself. Come back with those troublesome trucks.
Come on, cheer everybody. Thank you, says Charlie.
Undoubtedly prefer the recreated mixed trains, which run on most Sundays and special events. These trains operate as a living reminder of the days when the line carried so few passengers that goods trucks were included in the same train to save money. Today there is more than one carriage, and the trucks are just for show, but the atmosphere and ambience of days gone by live on.
In 1996, the line twinned with Le Chemin de Fer de la Baie de Somme on France's Somme estuary, and in 1998, locomotive number 14 Charlwelton was invited to take part in Le Fête de la Vapeur. After crossing the Channel by ferry, the engine joined a host of French rail vehicles in the weekend-long Festival of Steam.
Back on home rails, the engine is seen here, helping turn a boyhood dream into reality. The line steam locomotive driving courses offer grown-up boys and girls the chance to drive a full-size steam engine under expert guidance of experienced drivers.
Charlwelton was built in 1917 by Manning Wardle and worked at ironstone quarries in Charlwelton in Northamptonshire and later at Sproxton in Leicestershire before preservation, and is painted in the ornately lined umber colours of its original owners.
Soon after reopening, it was realised that the income achieved by running passenger trains alone would not pay all the bills, and other activities would be needed. One of the most successful is the line's luxury dining train, the Wealden Bell. 6-course evening dinners are served most Saturdays, roast lunches are available on Sundays, and for really special occasions, the train can be hired for exclusive parties.
The engine in charge of this wheel and bell working is USA class tank number 65. This loco, along with DS-238 Wainwright, was built in America in 1943 and shipped across the Atlantic in kit form as part of the war effort. After the war, they were used as shunters at Southampton docks, before moving to Ashford, where they spent most of the 1960s working in the sidings at the wagon works. Number 65 sports the Southern Railway black livery it carried at Southampton. Terrier number 2678 was one of those that pulled the last passenger train on the line in 1954. It last steamed in 1964 and had a number of owners before it was saved for use on the Kent and East Sussex Railway. Now, after a 6-year restoration costing in excess of £60,000, the 1880 built engine is back in action. It is seen here on running in turns and has now been painted in the Southern Railway livery it carried when it was hired to the line for much of the 1930s and 40s.
Work is well underway to rebuild the line's original Terrier number 3 Bodiam, which was built in 1872 and has worked on the Kent and East Sussex Railway since 1901. The frames have been sent away for specialist repair and a new boiler has been purchased to ensure this grand old engine sees service long into the next millennium. Few of the pioneering enthusiasts that reopened the line would ever have dreamt that restorations on this scale could be conducted 25 years later.
April 2000 will mark the line's centenary, and the dream of again taking tourists to Bodiam Castle will at last be realised. The availability of a National Lottery grant from the Millennium Commission provided a one-off chance to secure half of the £2 million required to rebuild the line between Northiam and Bodiam. After 2 years of preparation and negotiation, a grant of £975,000 was awarded in November 1997. Other grants were also forthcoming, and these, along with £250,000 worth of voluntary labour and an issue of bearer bonds, completed the project funding.
Much of the civil engineering and track laying has been completed. Track ballasting, signalling and restoration of Bodiam Station will be carried out later in 1999, in time for the reopening on the 2nd of April 2000, exactly 100 years after the first train steamed in.
So we leave you with a compilation of shots from the late 1990s, showing that as we celebrate our Silver Jubilee, the Kent and East Sussex Railway is not only steaming strong, but set to embark on a new and exciting chapter in the line's history. As the new millennium dawns and we build on the remarkable achievements of the last 25 years, the railway is poised to take part in a 21st century railway renaissance.
Today, steam trains run from Tenterden right through to Bodiam. It has taken 30 years to restore services to this point. This film from 1927 shows Bodiam with a typical train of the period. From complete closure in 1961, the station slumbered. From early days, the Kennedy Sussex Railway Preservation Society did from time to time clear the site, and even to manage to run the occasional steam train nearby, as shown here with Marcia, the little industrial engine. Now in 1999 the miracle has happened with a grant from the Millennium Commission to help finance the £2 million project. The heavy machinery moves on to the site and the track begins to be laid. At Northiam, the new signal box takes shape as Noel, the first terrier to run on the line for many years, is taken out for a test run after a total rebuild in the workshops at Rolvenden. Adrian Landy from the workshop feels the axle boxes for excessive heat. A locomotive and a works train ventures down the unballasted new track on the way to Bodiam. Tenterden, the Norwegian has a birthday.
Very nice.
Another special day was on 30th of May 1999 when TV personality and journalist Ian Hislop came to Tenterden to launch Noel and the Austerity number 25 back into full public service.
In 1954, she continued to work on CR levels until 1964. Okay. I learnt this train.
Let's go then. Can't wait to have a go on it.
Hello? I'm back again. I learnt this next train.
The pair of locomotives ran together on trains for the rest of the day. Flying from Headcorn Aerodrome, a good view can be obtained of the railway. Here is Tenterden. The remoteness of Wittersham Road Station shows up here. Northiam. The castle at Bodiam reminds us of the extension to come soon. Roberts Bridge. Returning north, we follow the course of the closed Headcorn section. The line across the field and the trees clearly show up. Approaching Biddenden. Frittenden Station today, nestling in a farmer's yard. Going back to 1954, this old film shows the station still open. Amateur films like this must lurk in attics all over the country. We wish we could get more like this one. Approaching St Michael's Tunnel and St Michael's Halt. The two platforms at Tenterden are clearly seen. The train returns to Headcorn. Note the large signal box. At Northiam, a huge pile of ballast has come by sea to Rye Harbour and then in local lorries.
We're running ballast on the Bodiam extension this morning with two hoppers of approximately 20 tonnes per load. You'll actually see it disappearing very rapidly as we go down the track.
A return to Northiam for another trip. The group has about 6 to 8 journeys a day. At Tenterden, the summer service is in full swing. In the yard, some old stock will be removed out of the way. The rocket replica is here to help celebrate the railway's 25th anniversary of service as a preserved line. The man in charge was questioned about the capability of the engine.
Bowling along, keep everything oiled and fire and water right, you keep going. Do about 30 miles an hour.
Hang on, I'll get back. Don't worry about that.
Noel is also in service. One afternoon Rocket took a trip with staff members to Bodiam. It stopped to coal up at Rolvenden. It managed the journey but needed assistance up Tenterden Bank. From France, another replica, Mark Seguin, came to Tenterden.
Was on there and it's going round because it's gear driven.
Il peut rien venir, hein. Bon, le train il va pas retrouver.
Silver Jubilee Day was July the 24th, 1999, and many vintage motors arrived to join in. Up from Rolvenden came some of the engines. The great parade of locomotives gets underway with the replicas participating. Charwelton, always a dependable engine, has only a little time left before it is withdrawn for a major 10-year examination. Right Honourable Lord Deeds, a campaigner for the railway over many years, gets into the swing of things before he flags away a special train. The train, with the original headboard fitted, arrives.
The train on the platform now is the 10:30 departure to Bodiam, calling at Rolvenden and Withisham Road. And this train will be waved away by Lord Deeds, who formally opened the railway 25 years ago.
Lord Deeds receives a badge for 25 years of service to the railway.
25 years of service to the railway, and also a certificate to mark the occasion.
I'm a worthy recipient of this gift, but thank you very much. Thank you very much. Are you taking any notice of the flag?
The special has to wait, as usual, for the up train to arrive in the loop. Noel is also on duty with Charwelton and the Pullman cars. The weekend saw many trains well filled to celebrate the Silver Jubilee. At Bodiam, restoration is well underway with many people undertaking lots of jobs. Graham Hopker discusses the type of wood we use.
Pine, I think. We got it from a chap up the road, Castle Handling, who makes pallets apparently. His main business is making pallets. And I think we did a good deal.
Strange motive power starts to appear. The tamping machine has arrived. A lot of ballast still has to be dropped. However, a steam-hauled train was arranged for one such trip. TV and film sessions do help with our finances.
Well, we're filming the Armagh rail disaster, where the back of the train full of 1,000 school children ran down the hill and smashed into the train behind, purely because the guard and the supervisor didn't know what to do about it when the engine stalled. It was major, it was mega. I mean, it was down at 1 in 50 for about a mile and a half, and it was doing about 70 or 80 miles an hour by the time it hit the train coming up behind.
The story is of a train which is struggling up an incline. The train is then divided. The first part is taken to the top and the engine returns for the second part. A stone is placed under the wheel to stop the second part falling back. Unfortunately, the second part rolls away and crashes into a following train. We had a diesel at the rear to stop the train rolling too far. The second day of filming saw costume being fitted to some familiar members of staff. This time it was the story of a misread timetable. A ganger took a rail out just before a boat train thundered by.
I'm the man who caused the accident.
What did you do then?
Took out a rail. I misread the timetable and I did not take a note of the boat train coming through on the main line.
Charlwelton takes out the train to the chosen location on a bridge. Modern video cameras are so small and efficient that they can be fixed on the front to give dramatic shots.
Okay, and the gangers can start working now.
Okay, action!
The action was repeated several times before the crew were happy. It's Santa time again. Local crew members prepare for a hard day ahead. The usual helpers arrive, Pixies and the man himself. The trains are always well filled with happy youngsters. The loadings were heavy enough to warrant double heading up the bank. This one is banked also. For the 31st of December 1999, a special Wealdon Pullman train is to take diners to celebrate the new millennium with champagne at Northiam Station at midnight. In the kitchen, staff are hard at it, preparing the food.
This is Cocktail Saint-Jacques, yeah? I know that, yeah. Hot one.
3 weeks to go before the most important event possibly of the decade, Bodiam Station has become the focal point for the railway.
Alex.
Finishing touches are taking place and a new footpath has been built to the castle. In the castle itself, lots of visitors could be potential passengers when our trains start running in a few weeks. And now the great day has arrived, with the opening of the extension to Bodiam and the line's centenary. The engine shed a hive of activity. All the available locomotives are being service ready for the special trains to be run today. USA number 65 will be the first off shed and is needed to be at Tenterden very soon.
No, the drivers get the things in when they've got the engine down.
Tenterden, guests are being welcomed, and Mr. Peter Barber, the project engineer of the extension, is also here. Shareholders who bought bonds to help finance the projects have first-class tickets to take the first train to Bodiam. Sharp at 9 a.m, as the bells of the Church of St Mildred's ring out, the first train pulls away.
We walked down to Bodiam, from Bodiam Castle to the station, and thought the track looks alright. Tried on the sleepers, it gone through.
At Northiam, the temporary hand signalling is in operation until the correct equipment is installed and tested. After taking on water, the token is handed over for the first public train on the extension. It's the 2nd of April 2000.